Good evening, Professor. Um, so I decided to answer the "How does our society define people who live in poverty?" question. After reading through the material that you posted for week three, I have some notes, that I jotted down here. Um, but I want to start off by being extremely transparent. I am not the biggest fan of how this question is worded. Um, it's a bit confusing. Um, yeah, it's hard to articulate it, but I had a difficult time answering the question based off how it was worded. So I just wanted to say that. Um, and yeah, I'm going to start off by saying I honestly don't know how society defines people who live in poverty. Um, if you asked me, and if I was being honest, I think that, and if we're speaking of the American society, of course, I think that society would define people who live in poverty as lesser than, lazy, uneducated, and for lack of better terms, just in the way. Like a problem. Like people that live in poverty are a problem as opposed to poverty being the problem. Um, but based off this reading and other stuff, not other stuff, but other research that I've done throughout my life, um, poverty or your status in society is determined by your socioeconomic status, or SES, um, which is basically something that's used to determine your social and economic hierarchy, or where you fall in the social or economic hierarchy in the American society. So your your SES, socioeconomic status, forgive me, it's been a long day, um, is usually based off things such as your income, your wealth, education, your social status, and I believe like your occupation. Um, so it's not just one thing; it's numerous factors that kind of determine one's socioeconomic status. Um, and these readings this week were excellent, by the way. I just wanted to say that, but this one in particular, according to the article that was written by the American um, Psychological Organization in 2020, socioeconomic status can encompass quality of life attributes as well as opportunities and privileges afforded to people within society. Poverty, specifically, is not a single factor, but rather is characterized by multiple physical and psychosocial stressors. Further, SES is a consistent and reliable predictor of a vast array of outcomes according to the lifespan, including physical and psychological health. So, based off all that, and that was a quote from this article that I read. Hopefully, um, I did the correct in-text citation. This is my first time really doing it um, over a video. So please, correct me if I didn't do this the proper way. I couldn't really find it in the book. So this basically means, or what it means to me, how I interpret what that means is people who live in poverty don't have the same opportunities and privileges as those who don't. People who live in poverty deal with or live in and deal with more physical, mental, and social stress than those who don't. People who live in poverty are at a higher risk of experiencing physical and mental illness than those who don't. Um, so poverty in itself is like a predictor. You can use a map. If we had a map that showed the different levels of poverty throughout the country. You know, there's levels of the socioeconomic status. You know, you got lower class, middle class, and upper class. Based off what this is saying, you know, if you went to the sections that said lower class, or the areas that had high levels of poverty, you would find more people with psychological and physical ailments. You would find less opportunities, less resources, more factors in the environment that could lead to stress, whether it's mental, physical, social stressors, just simply based off poverty. So poverty, or people that live in poverty, basically are indicators. You know, they can determine, not even determine, but people that live in poverty, their lifespan can be determined based off poverty. I probably didn't articulate that well, and please forgive me, but I'm trying my best here. But it's you know, it's a terrible thing. It's something that's destroying our country, and I feel like the people that are living in poverty are treated like they're the problem, as opposed to poverty being addressed. And another part of socioeconomic status, poverty, that I haven't mentioned yet, race. Race is a huge factor. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, research has shown that race and ethnicity, in terms of stratification, often determine a person's socioeconomic status. So this means that there's a strong correlation between poverty and race, and most people that live in poverty in our societies are minorities. It's sad to say, but that's, you know, that's a known fact, that the majority of the people that live in this country are minorities, that their white counterparts don't experience nearly half the poverty that minorities do, and that includes African Americans, Latinos. I know Asian Americans are leaning, or based off the research, are leaning more towards middle and upper class, but they still are considered minorities, and are still marginalized to a certain degree, don't have the same resources or opportunities to a certain degree, simply due to them being minorities in this country. So poverty determines a lot. And it's a lot of factors that go into poverty. It's a lot of factors that go into your socioeconomic status. So it's if you want to define people who live in poverty, it'll be a very complex definition. You know, I don't think it's really one way to define people who live in poverty. But if I could find a word, I would use depressed. I would use vulnerable, forgotten. You know, lack of better term, swept under the rug. Like, you know, but that's just me. That's my definition of people who live in poverty in our society. Yeah, you know, that's really, and I feel like I'm just rambling now, going on talking, but hopefully I answered your question. You know, I did try to the best of my ability. Like I said, it's kind of hard to answer it for me, based off how it's worded. It was a little bit confusing for me, but hopefully this will suffice, and I'll see you in class next week.